violation on Vienna Convention on the right of 1969, the right to conclude the international agreements. The document was drafted and prepared of the low-level functionaries, and the team from the Russian side participating in this dialogue with Ukraine is not of the right level. They're not just not decision maker. They have no knowledgeability, no expertise as regards the international law and the Ukrainian legislation. There's no expertise enough. It's insufficient. And then again, when they ask us to leave any kind of alliances, I commented on the alliances. Russia, that is now in the collective security organization of states, so the KAB, and they should leave it. And they have some alliances with Iran and North Korea, so it is very strange indeed. It's again an ultimatum. I'm not discussing all the items here. The neutral and nuke-free status of Ukraine, nuclear weapons-free, prohibition of transit, placement, and actual engagement of this weapon. This is spamming. This is spamming. This is just to make believe. This is just a smokescreen for the inexperienced electorate. What kind of nuclear weapons we are talking about? This is political PR, sheer PR. We do not place and do not possess any kind of nukes, and fortunately in this case, and you know why we don't have, because we actually had in 1994 we became a party to the agreement for non-proliferation of the nukes, and we cannot deal in nukes, and the status is known, that of Ukrainians. They should stop proliferation covering the territory of Belarus with their nukes. But this is clear, this part is clear. Now about the armed forces of Ukraine, and our some kind of formations, military, and disbanding of the nationalist formations, and the private military companies. We have no private military companies to speak of in the Ukrainian armed forces. Azov is the National Guard, part of the National Guard. And if they discuss private armies, we have no private armies, we cannot have them. It is not allowed by the legislation, but that gives me some feed for thoughts. And they have the Wagner-like groups, and they recognize that they have private military companies operating Wagner notoriously, but now they recognize that they have them. And well, I'm not discussing all the items, specifically the Russian language. We have the official language, it's Ukrainian, and they stay concerned with the Russian-speaking population. It looks very strange because they have destroyed and keep destroying en masse the regions where the majority of people used to speak Russian or Russian and Ukrainian in parallel. So this PR and bloody ultimatum, and that is what I see here, concluding. They are prepared for the exchange because they need the exchanges. We are prepared to exchange, but we cannot continue any diplomatic contacts at the level that is not decision-making at all. I think is pointless. It's my opinion. In my view, the exchanges are ongoing and should be ongoing. the Russians are not ready to arrange for any ceasefire. They cannot make such decisions. They are not empowered. It's for the leaders to decide. That's how they presented it to us. That's a different level of decision making. All right. And my proposal is, we suggest, and I think our partners can support us there, we suggest to the Russians to have ceasefire before the leaders' meeting, till the time of the leaders' meeting. So we are prepared to have this meeting to avoid any kind of speculations and insinuations. It's up to Russians, Istanbul, Vatican, Switzerland, any venue, from Monday on, any day. Why ceasefire till that meeting, a leaders' meeting? Because we'll have a meeting if we don't fail to reach any kind of understanding. There's no desire, will to de-escalate. There's no vision of concluding that. We can do that on the same day and conclude. That's the Russian unilaterally. You do that. We'll leave it to them. If we can continue talks, the dialogue, and are prepared to make the de-escalating steps, well, then we will. Ceasefire with American monitoring, the U.S. Safeguards of mediation. And if they do not want a long ceasefire, we can have a meeting any day, starting from tomorrow, and can have arranged, available for the meeting. 1, 2, or 3 days, the ceasefire, they wanted the Easter, great victory is there on the 9th of May, and they can all arrange for this win-win with the ceasefire. However, President Trump would support it, and President Erdogan would like to have this four sides, him, Donald Trump, myself, and Peter. And we are ready for this meeting any day. Well, that's it from me. Dear colleagues, first about the items covered. So put your questions, but first introduce yourselves. Natalia Kushnib, ABC News. Mr. Zelensky, having read this memorandum, this is an extended version of 2022 without denazification and demilitarization. There's a notion, but essentially there. So what's the difference between the two versions? I don't see any, almost none. I can see that there are certain changes in the language for the ultimatums in question. And basically the essence, the gist, the spirit are the same. There are some additional spheres, edits where they would like to physically, they wanted to destroy the leadership, originally not about electoral processes, but I don't see any change essentially. Some changes in approaches. Why? There's this insufficient pressure on the Russian party. Some operations make the rhetoric of the United States more vigorous because they said that we had no cards on our hand. Now it is a bit softer. It's a bit mitigated. I'm being cautious about this. Our team is in the States right now, and the atmosphere has changed. Now, today we expect a big Senate briefing in Senate. Vice Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, my head of office, Mr. Yermak, Mr. Boyev, Deputy Minister of Defense, my envoy for sanctions, and the advisor in military matters, all sanctions, children abducted, the battlefield situation, special ops, it's all included, it's all in one package being presented to the Senate, and we hope that the Senate will commit themselves to the sanctions and actually engage them. It was all caused by the Russian aggression in the first place. There was a certain mitigation on the U.S. part for the conditions, and the American side said originally that without ceasefire, without agreement to have the ceasefire, the sanctions would be employed. We have demonstrated, the Russians have demonstrated that they are not ready for any ceasefire. And they demonstrate that vocally. It's not in the winds, it's not behind any kind of curtains or closed doors, it's open, it's in the open, and we insist on sanctions and all asking for it very insistently. You comment on the memorandum, and this is just a make-believe. This is not this is a more smoke screen, and the Russians speak to that effect. In your opinion, why our partners, the U.S. partners, fail or seemingly fail to understand that? I think some of them do understand. Some of them don't. Well, I think the Americans are intelligent people. Some of them are just not willing, in particular, to notice certain things. Some of them are prepared and quite decisive in that realization. For the political compromises, I understand that some people would like to work on soft pause and not to shut any doors for the opportunities. But Russia is a house with too many doors. Why should they have so many doors? And Ukrainians, who never attacked anyone, have just one door, a narrow one. Well, and we would like for everyone to see, well, the more and more people in the United States, I mean the leadership, more and more people can see what Russians really want. They want to keep procrastinating, postponing with the make-believe diplomacy without any serious solutions and decisions, just to postpone the sanctions, suspend the sanctions, and keep advancing, occupying the Ukrainian territories. That's what they want. Yes, please. BBS. Volodymyr, so the BBS News. President, you mentioned that your team is now in Washington, D.C. They've had some meetings with Mr. Rubio, Mr. Kellogg, Witkoff, senators today. They're making a big briefing. But we understand that the Senate, they're already 80% ready and have enough votes to impose the sanction. But there's no political will on the part of the President, President Trump. So how can this briefing actually help this situation? Perhaps you are in contact with the President for the sanctions to be promoted and supported. And you said that you suggest ceasefire with U.S. monitoring and mediation. Can you elaborate on that? Well, first of all my talks with President Trump are public. One way or another, some of the meetings are not public in certain aspects and certain points, but we are always meeting openly. Now talking about the other levels of U.S. management, let's say. Some of the discussions are not public. There are plenty of them, quite enough, and they all are supposed to bear fruit before they are made public. This is my second point. About the sanctions, we understand that the Senate is ready for that, and we heard yesterday not just the senators, but Congress people, and the Speaker, Mike Johnson. I had no meeting with him, but that's his stance, his position, and I'm happy to see that. But the President Trump, is supposed to be ready. And his latest signals were about giving them another chance, the Russians another chance. But for us it's important that the Russians promised him to deliver a doable document. It is not doable. It's not my political will, my political agenda, which is a very important point in its world. I'm not difficult. I'm not easy, but there's the legislation I cannot actually bend. This is not about advocacy. This is not an advocacy campaign or lobbyism. This is the international law, the constitution of Ukraine. So we have what we have. We have this legislative foundation. That's why it is important for us to be consistent in our steps, all of us. I am in favor on consistency suggested by the US side. Ceasefire or sanctions. That's the dilemma. We didn't want any sanctions against us, so we choose ceasefire. The Russians don't care, I suppose. So then, sanctions for them. And your second point, the ceasefire that you offer, it should be with the U.S. monitoring mediation. Well, in any case, if we decide upon ceasefire, and the main point is who is to guarantee, who is the guarantor, who is the mediator, in order to say that this side violated, that side violated. So it's for violation of ceasefire that then get sanctions. And in Istanbul 1, Istanbul 2, we discussed that the U.S. can monitor this and mitigate through mediation. But this is mediate, basically. But this is a technical issue. I think they would agree. Technically speaking, they are the only ones who are in position, who are capable of delivering there. And that's why the leaders should meet in that form. That's my opinion, anyway. I think that we have to demonstrate this will to have a ceasefire. This is a good idea. Till the meeting, and at the meeting, we'll discuss the monitoring format, because there are certain things which are technically well monitored regardless of the parties' stances. Of course, the range of weapons can be controlled. The missiles not flying, the UAVs not flying, no warships, no attacks against seaports. This is technically easy to control. The battlefield is different. It's more difficult, and we need some technical mediation for the battlefield, monitoring for fairness, for avoiding any kind of accusations coming from any side, any of the two. We can control the drones on the battlefield, but they will say that they violate, they would say that we violate. It's our word against theirs. That's why we need a mediator, but to demonstrate the will. Now, we can do that before the leaders' meeting, and the Russians cannot argue against that, because they have done this, they've been there twice, unilaterally, though they kept attacking, but that was their unilateral announcement, and they wouldn't say that it was impossible without the U.S. partners. So we have to first understand that they are prepared to conclude this war. They have the will, and present a way So we think that we should cease fire before the leaders' meeting, unconditionally, because we are ready tomorrow, Istanbul, Switzerland, Vatican, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, at the end of the week, at the beginning of the week, any day, we are open, but people should understand that the peoples, European nations, Ukraine, and all the world, we have the chance for the world, for peace, and the parties have arranged a temporary ceasefire before the meeting. That's the proposal. That's the precedent, basically. And we could do without it if people in Istanbul on the Russian side are constructed. But they are not. Suspilne, public broadcaster, about the memorandum, are there any items that Ukraine can consider as a draft? And you said that that memorandum, should we had we received it earlier, we wouldn't have had to go. Well, the Ukrainian side said there's nothing on the table. This is the ultimatum. But otherwise, there's no proposal for the escalation. So my question is this. If you have meetings for the delegations, does it mean that Istanbul 3 will never ensue? If we want to be substantive, I describe the format, not the ultimatum we have on the table. It's not about the items in this document. It's not just about some items that we disagree with. I can go one by one through the list. It's not about some of them being doable. The whole spirit of this document is that of an ultimatum. We have to change the spirit, and then we can do it differently with some aspects about people, about territories, about the escalation, ceasefire, and so forth. But if you don't want to do it, you produce this language. Well, if you want to be liked by the very radical part of your society, I'm talking about the Russians, of course. If you want to be liked by them, give them this kind of language, and then promulgate it through TASS or whatever agency. But I'm not sure whether that can satisfy the radicals in the Russian society. They just want to destroy all Ukrainians with the nukes and then get to Europe. They are open, their children. You heard them talking about the children. I cannot even quote them. The European women, that's their position. About territories, it's their position. Ukraine, that's their stance. Will go till Berlin. Well, you know this narrative. It's sad to see that kind of approach. Another short question about the land force commander. Have you identified the candidate? No, not yet. New York Times.
Thanks. I just want to be clear. You're proposing today that you have a ceasefire and then a leaders meeting, but I assume you would take a leaders meeting without a ceasefire. And then, just real briefly, you've laid out here how far apart you are. What makes you think at a leaders meeting anything would be different?
My opinion, if we will have a ceasefire, this short one, before leaders, I think that this is, first of all, this is a mood and spirit of the meeting will be. That we are speaking about peace, or we're beginning from the war. This is the first. This is about the escalation. The second point, if leaders are coming, if leaders have meeting, all of us want, I think, to have some successful their nations. Any kind of success, big or small, but in any way it will be a step forward to peace. if we can decide lasting or a long ceasefire until we will make the document, which will not be ultimatum, will be document. This is good. It's not, I mean, something what we dream each day, yes, about, but it's a big step to peace. Very big step to peace. The second point, if we speak about humanitarian issues, if we speak about children, how to get back thousands of children, it's not about day, week, month. I don't know how long it will be. Really, it's a pity. But some children can be adults. I'm sorry, but I want to underline this. So that's why, as early as we can start this discussion and find mechanism how to get back children. Yes, as early as possible, we have to do it. That's why I think if on the level of leaders you have political decision of ceasefire, then prepare technical groups for prepare the document which will bring us to the end of the war. Then children, then exchange all to all. If on the level of leaders we will say all to all, I mean this. So this is the last chance. I mean this. Nobody else will decide, and nobody can say I need consultations with other guys or something. No. On the level of leader, we decide. It's mean that we can have some success, even some success, and I think this is possible. Of course, if United States will stay strong, and if Russia will be ready for some steps to peace. I'm not, because they are not ready for peace. I think so. But I shared it in September with President Trump. He's not yet president-elected, but I shared with him, I think that Putin personally doesn't want any kind of peace, only ultimatum and only full occupation of Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Latvia, Litva, Estonia, Kazakhstan. I think Kazakhstan can be earlier. Sorry for the word can be. I mean, this, God bless, nothing will be with their sovereignty. But I think that he's moving this way, and also Poland, and also I spoke with the new president of Romania. I said to him, so what does it mean, occupation of Ukraine? Everybody understands that it's occupation of Moldova. Immediately they stay on the borders with Romania. Immediately. I mean, so it will be very quick. So that's it. That's what he wants. That's why we don't need to wait from Putin, especially from his person. We don't need to wait the time when he will be ready for the peace. And from him, we can't wait for his initiative moving to peace. We just have to pressure on him, and maybe we will get peace. And we are very close to this with sanctions and etc. But we need unity in it and joint position.
Just to be clear, so could there be a leaders' meeting without a ceasefire, or in your mind, or that would be not really serve a purpose? Could you still have a leaders' meeting without the ceasefire?
Yes, it can be. It can be. Yes, again, so we are. I don't want to be very flexible with the ceasefire, because it's a real. I mean, this is a possibility, and big possibility. Because between us, for President Trump, but it's not a secret. For him, ceasefire is the end of the war. It's true, but it's really big. It's a really big step to the end of the war. I think so. With Russians, I think so. But even if there is no ceasefire, I mean, if your question is directly, are you ready for the meeting on the level of leaders? before ceasefire. So if I will tell you not, it means that, so Russians immediately will say, so you see they don't want, that's why I don't play this game, let's think about it, or I will think, and a little bit later, and etc. No, if they're not ready for ceasefire, but ready for just for meeting on the level of leaders, okay? But my position is better to have ceasefire before. It's a spirit, as I said, it's a moving to peace. It's a topic of our meeting, how to continue such ceasefire and other de-escalation steps, or not to continue.
ICTV.
Христина Гавриш, телеканал ICTV.
Christina Havrish, ICTV President. We haven't seen any public response to the web operations from Donald Trump. Perhaps it has been made public, but Kit Kellogg said that that was Ukraine's raising risks in this war. Can you comment on this? It is very difficult for me to comment on Donald Trump's position, President Trump's position. We haven't heard his position, but we have heard from some people, let's say, from his close circle. I think that's their shared position. Well, it's my guess anyway. So the United States, we're still hopeful, and we will hear from them. We know that it is absolutely just and fair. We never targeted any civil infrastructure and children like the Russians do. Nothing of the kind, right? And we have done things just and fair for the intelligence services of any countries, all the jurisdictions, serious in this business, to say that this is the highest level imaginable for such an operation, special operation. With your permission, another question about Sumy region. We can see some intensive developments with the Russians. They will do that. They will keep trying. There's nothing new there, no surprise at all. The military know what to do about it, and they are doing their thing as much as one can expect. They're doing their best, but which direction or offensive they will choose, we can't know, but our guess is Sumy. But also the east, Zaporizhzhia, Kharkiv, right, that it's all Sumy now. That was the idea. It's not a new operation. This is another wave of attack and advancement. They have no success. There are some developments, but there's this gray area, or a gray war zone. You know that some settlements are devastated, not overnight. It's a lengthy process, but they're doing that. The war attrition, they are doing that, and we know about that and trying to oppose. So they wanted to make a bigger operation, have a bigger scope. They want to occupy Sumy, Kharkiv regions. That's their wish. First, they decide to attack along all this line, but then they decided that Sumy was enough to control, to ruin, and some other towns 3 to 40 kilometers from the border. Then they decided to reduce that to 7 to 10 kilometers because they have no force for that. Well, just take my word for it. There are no good reasons. They're just not capable. They have no capabilities and capacity. That's the only impediment. That's the only showstopper. So diplomacy is supposed to work, but you can see that we can talk about talking and it will all go into talks, all the peace. Talk to this medium, to that network, take former CNN and Fox News anchors. It's not about Republican and Democratic, Republicans versus Democrats. There are people that are on underpay, and they are using the smoke screen, and they are channeling that, converting that all into the talks of that kind. But their principal message is to demonstrate that Ukraine does not want peace. Ukraine is losing the war, and we have to do everything possible for the U.S. to leave the negotiations, not to impose any sanctions. Well, these are the principal things they want, to stay vis-à-vis us without any interference on anybody's part, to be able to impose the ultimatum. CNN, please. Victoria Budanka, CNN. Do you feel the political will on the part of the U.S. to continue this mediation? And just how much political will can we have in Russia, or expect in Russia, for the U.S. to stay in this mediator's seat? Well, for example, in Turkey, there was a demonstration of this role for the U.S. The Russians did everything to actually squeeze them out of the venue. They did it once. Everyone was surprised, astonished, absolutely astounded. It wasn't really nice. And we all went there because of the Americans on their urge, and they actually encouraged us to do that, to introduce some general approach. But the Americans all of a sudden were squeezed out of that by the Russians. The Russians were very offensive about that. And the ultimatum, that was in the pipeline with them. That was on the agenda they have. And quite frankly, they are not happy with the Turkish mediation, to tell you the truth. Why? Because here is how it happened. With the Turkish mediation, our first meeting in Istanbul was, then first they got rid of the U.S., and there was no representation. If you compare the level of representation that time and this time, nobody. Back then, everyone was much more constructive, and then they saw what Russians had in mind. Then Turkey gave the floor to the Russians in Istanbul. That is important. Why? I have no claims against that. I don't blame the Turkish side, but we have to understand the story. The Russians, well, were given the background information, going back to Peter the Great of theirs, well, trying to win the time, and then say, well, we have the talks, we have the exchange, all right, we've done that. The second time, the Turkish party gave the floor to us, and that was right, that was fair, and we got down to business. And then the Russians brought us back into this historic background. The Russians, according to our information, are very unhappy with the Turks, the Turkish conduct in that situation, you see. That's because they feel like gods. We've had almost an hour, 3 questions. You and Bloomberg. Katerina Denisova, Kiev Independent. At which stage President, you have talks with the U.S. for procurement of the U.S. Weapon systems, and how can this mechanism become doable and workable? The agenda of our team's meeting with the U.S. team today and yesterday, for that matter, was as follows, is as follows. The mineral deal situation, this progress report, and we understand that this is a positive thing, and from the U.S. side, and there will be this meeting with the Vice Prime Minister. Sverdenko will have a meeting with the Secretary Bessent on this free trade agreement between Ukraine and the U.S. She will present all our suggestions for the mineral deal to Secretary Bessent, and for the free trade agreement as well. The second item on the agenda, there are two agreements as the first item, the mineral deal and the free trade. Deputy Minister Boev of Defense and Police, they will together present this agreement that I'm discussing with the Europeans for potential funding to be provided, because it's a serious one. And we'll know what we can achieve after that meeting. The two items. The third item is very important. It's about sanctions, because some sanctions are active, some are not active, and this should be presented to the Senate, and we should present this impact report for their proposals. And then there's another important thing, and we demonstrate the Lindsey and Graham from the sanction package, and Ursula and the von der Leyen and the European leaders. This is twofold package, and it's important from both sides. And, well, these are the principal things. What do you expect as this defense deal? Well, my proposal is as follows. We have the money not yet disbursed. Some remain there. We don't need, well, nothing, no additional funding needed. That was all voted by the Congress last year. We would like to use that money, but we can demonstrate that we can do that, use that money, or have separately the defense deal, and President Trump likes deals. For us, it's a win-win situation. Possibly the important items on our defense shopping list. And the principal things, the weapon systems, the numbers. Well, I don't see, quite frankly, any big challenges in that department, because we want to get the weapons, let's say, Middle East representatives would buy, and even more buying from the U.S. arsenals and the American weapon systems. Well, it's not anything out of the usual. This is a normal thing to happen. Bloomberg, last question. Bloomberg, Saponova, Olesa Saponova, coming back to this leaders meeting without ceasefire as an option. For how long are you prepared to wait for the Russian signals that they are preparing this meeting? Are we talking weeks, a month, or whatever? And how much time, or what's the timeline and the deadline in your book, even for Donald Trump to sign off the sanction package without looking for excuses to postpone its coming into effect? The way I see it is this. I think that if there is no position on the ceasefire, no preparedness, the sanctions should be imposed, even if they clearly don't want to finish this war. The Americans say that this is too much to ask for, and that was their language they offered. That was their message. And we say, all right, if the compromise is in no ceasefire, hence sanctions, it's clear. I'm answering your colleague's question. Are you prepared to have a meeting of leaders without any sanctions? I'm prepared to do that, but the sanctions should follow. Are we ready to meet without ceasefire? No. Yes, but no ceasefire, hence we have sanctions. And that actually reduces any positive expectations from the meeting question. So that was my proposal. Basically, it seemed to me that the Russians could demonstrate no ceasefire. We don't know how much time should elapse, but that is a window of opportunity potentially for some other reasons to postpone the sanctions. Perhaps I'm trying to help all the parties involved as much as they can. But, well, there will be some logic in it. In that case, if they have no ceasefire and no sanctions fall, there won't be any logic in this case. So I'm trying to look, in my mind, for some reasons for their format to somehow this. But for how long I prepared to wait? I'm very patient. I'm ready to wait for as much as it takes. What else can we do? Ceasefire could have happened before the operation in question, but no operation would then have followed. That does not mean that we, in parallel, we're not doing anything but just sitting on our hands. We are waiting, but we are working on ceasefire. Yes, ceasefire is ceasefire. How else can we interpret this? Well, we are not weighing with you the likes and dislikes that we have. We have to opt for some rules. I think if the rules are the same for everyone, they should be the same. Violation is a different matter. If they violate, we can also do the same. How they do it and how we do it, it depends on what we have we haven't violated anything. I think we have not yet violated anything. Nothing. We have to thank President for his time now.